Hey everyone, welcome to the Create Context channel. I am Joe from Create Context, and I wanted to do something a little bit outside of the typical thing I normally do, the Criterion 40 and the Weekly Movie Minute. I wanted to talk about a new movie that came out, The Electric State, and I wanted to kind of talk about the state of Netflix and movies in general. The Electric State is a $320 million Netflix exclusive Russo brothers film, and it hit streaming on March 14th. Much to the chagrin of movie lovers everywhere. I've just seen a lot of doom and gloom about this movie and the state of the movie industry in general in relation to this film. It's impossible to ignore that this massive budget movie hit streaming on one of the lowest weekend box offices of all time. Theaters ranked in a mere $54 million off of several original IP films, while The Electric State sits proudly at #1 on Netflix's streaming service. This is a bummer for everyone who loves movies and going to the theater. Sean Baker, the now multiple Oscar-winning director, gave an impassioned plea about the importance of movie theaters in his acceptance speech, and while the theater is important and something I love, I don't know if The Electric State is this kind of pale horse that we're all fearing. The Electric State is a bad movie, not offensively bad, yet there are some offensive moments. The general premise is an alternate world where mega corporations like Walt Disney created smarter, more capable robots throughout the 50s and 60s. These robots ended up doing all of our menial tasks. Garbage takers, landscapers, bartenders, basically anything that involved manual labor, we got a robot to do it. This all worked well and good until one day, as they typically do, the robots revolted, leading to a years-long civil war between robots and humans, a war that was eventually won when, you guessed it, another mega corporation made a better robot, one that was controlled by humans, but in this Severance mind swap type of way. You'd link into this robot and you'd be able to control it, but half of your brain could be somewhere else that you'd rather be while the other half is controlling the robot. It's never fully explained. It's all pretty convoluted, and this whole setup is explained in the first 7 minutes of the movie. All this really is, though, is just set dressing to get two giant stars, Chris Pratt and Millie Bobby Brown, together in a 1990s world that is both futuristic and nostalgic. Think Ready Player One, but nowhere near as good and nowhere near as fun. If that premise sounds interesting, it's because it is. I'm not going to lie. That's not a bad setup for a movie or a TV series. And it's not even done particularly bad here. It's just so generic and done with the Russo's brothers' signature PG-13 style, but aimed at 8-year-olds. The movie also really isn't saying anything. It has no heart, and the actors are absolutely phoning it in. I like Chris Pratt and I like Millie Bobby Brown enough as actors, but Chris Pratt has just been Han Solo in every movie for the past 10 years, and he's doing the exact same here. Millie Bobby Brown is really struggling to act against these green screen robots, and it just really shows. The only real offensive part of the movie is the idea of these robots. There seems to be some underlying themes about evil corporations and accepting others, but the others here are robots from giant corporations, real ones. The leader of the robot army that led the revolt is Mr. Peanut, the snack food mascot. These robots end up becoming the heroes of the film while fighting against the fake evil mega corporation. It makes the whole idea needlessly confusing and at times offensive. This fake mega corporation, they're the bad guy, but these real ones, they're the good guys. And all of the robots we made to take people's jobs, well, they are equal to us humans, and we should live in harmony with them. Maybe it's a metaphor for humanity, but when the metaphor is literal corporation mascots, the metaphor falls apart. Especially when you think about the fact that this is a Netflix movie that was made for $320 million, a company that's so much at the forefront of AI and algorithms and feeding us more and more content regardless of how good it is, and it's taking away this $320 million movie from movie theaters. It, man, feels a little gross. That weird, confusing metaphor aside, The Electric State isn't as bad as something like last year's Borderlands, but it's definitely not the type of film I personally want to see. And that's kind of why I'm so perplexed why people are lamenting this film hitting streaming instead of theaters. I get it, it's a $320 million movie, but if this movie had hit theaters, one of two things would have happened. It would have either bombed and critics would say, "I told you so," or it would have been a success and critics would have said, "This is slop and we need real movies in theaters." By hitting Netflix and going to number one, it just kind of makes Netflix look stupid. They spent a ton of money on this movie, on a bad movie, and maybe it'll be a hit, but what even is a hit for Netflix? Are people subscribing just to see The Electric State? Certainly not. So let Netflix take the L, get all the bad reviews, and let the theaters do something novel. Play good movies. The box office may have only hit $54 million last weekend, but hey, don't blame me. I saw 5 different movies in theaters over the weekend. I saw Black Bag, Opus, In the Lost Lands, The Rule of Jenny Penn, and Novocaine. Now, none of these movies were masterpieces, but they were all more interesting than The Electric State, and these were all movies that I would rather see in theaters than at home on streaming. At the time of this video, Novocaine has made about $11.5 million off an $18 million budget. That's not a bad return for an opening weekend, and I hope the film continues to make some money from both theaters and when it finally releases on paid VOD. Not because it's a great movie, but because it harkens back to an older time of movie going. When I was a kid, my family and I went to the movies a lot. It was a normal Friday or Saturday activity, and we rarely knew what we were going to see. We would often just go to the theater, see what was playing, and make a decision based on the rating and what poster looked cool. And Novocaine has one of the coolest looking posters. Sometimes we'd get to see great movies like Jurassic Park or the first Mission Impossible, and sometimes we saw movies like that terrible Jack Frost movie starring Michael Keaton. Man, that was a real stinker. That just doesn't happen anymore for most families. Going to the movies is too expensive now, and people tend to only go for tentpole event viewing releases. People flooded for Barbenheimer with their shirts and Instagram posts, but way few people are going to pay that same amount of money for an $18 million movie starring Jack Quaid from The Boys. Now, I understand why something like The Electric State going into theaters could be good, because even though it is that slop, it is the type of slop that could make a ton of money and allow theaters to exist and create space for movies like Companion and Novocaine and Black Bat. But I don't know if that is the worst thing in the world. I want to see theaters survive and movies continue to turn a profit, but not if they all look like The Electric State. Steven Soderbergh has released 2 movies in the first quarter of 2025, and both have the potential to be profitable. Presence certainly turned a profit. It looks like it's about $9 million. It's made off a $2 million budget. And Black Bag is still in theaters, but it was made on a pretty modest budget, giving all the talent attached to it, and has the potential to gain any theatrical losses back through VOD or streaming licenses. Both these movies are leagues better than the slop Netflix is producing, at least on the film side. Netflix is still making some of the best and most original TV productions of all time. I just watched Adolescence. That show is incredible. And while the theater going audience may be dwindling, the audience that's still going, they are more passionate than ever. We are going to the movies by ourselves, seeing multiple flicks a day and writing or talking about it all over the internet. Movies aren't dead, they're just evolving. So I'm left to wrestle with this idea about the electric state and the state of movies. I want more original ideas, but I don't want more movies like The Electric State. But if we want theaters to survive, we need a big tentpole movie like this to release every so often to keep the theater operating through January and February and March. If a studio is going to spend $320 million on a movie, they should release it in theaters. But in the same vein, no studio should be making junk like this for $320 million. Netflix, I think, is learning this. And I hope we get more films like Rebel Ridge or Carry On in the future. Those were Netflix originals and they were great. Smaller movies with modest budgets that can find a good audience. Movies like The Electric State may work in getting to number 1 at the charts. Number 2 and 3 on Netflix right now are Kraven the Hunter and Trap. It makes no sense for Netflix to pour that much money into a movie that can easily get the same amount of eyeballs as just licensing a bad Sony villain movie. Netflix should be pouring their money into what they do best, original TV series. 9 out of the top 10 series on Netflix are Netflix original series. Compare that to 2 out of 10 on the film side. Shows like Adolescence, the current number 1 TV show, it's one of the most brilliant filmmaking things I've seen in years. Everything about that show, from the blocking to the camera work to the writing, is extraordinary. And that's something that wouldn't work as a movie. It only works as a show. So let's hope the Electric State is the end of things. Let's have the major studios make the big blockbusters. I can live with a Deadpool and Wolverine or a few Beetlejuice sequels every year if it means movies like Companion get to come out in January. I'm not all that sad to see a $320 million movie get made exclusively for Netflix, but I'm a lot happier to see a $10 million movie make $35 million at the box office in January. We need these smaller movies in addition to the big ones. Hopefully Thunderbolts, Fantastic Four, and a new Jurassic Park movie can surge cash into the theaters during the busy months. But in the down months, me and all the other sickos, we're going to be enjoying first-person ghost stories and $10 million killer robot movies. Thank you guys for hanging out. If you like this video, I might do some more like it in the future, just kind of me rambling about a movie or something that isn't a part of the Weekly Movie Minute or something else. Just something to kind of add to the conversation of what is going on in the world of movies right now. If you want to give us a subscribe, that would be super cool. And I'll see you guys next time.